Hello and welcome to On Second Street. Today we're going to be talking about Canada's housing crisis. And we're going to be talking about something that I don't think gets enough attention when it comes to the high cost of buying houses in Canada. And specifically, we're going to be chatting about all the different government taxes and fees that people have to pay when they go to either purchase a new house or purchase a house in general. And we've got two great guests lined up to talk about this topic. Scott Fash is the CEO of Bild, Alberta, and Jay Goldberg is the Ontario Director with the Canadian Taxpayers Federation. Thank you both for taking a few minutes to chat with me today. I want to start by zeroing in on something I saw on LinkedIn. A pretty well-known economist in Canada, Mike Moffat. He's the CEO of the Place Center as well. And what he posted on LinkedIn was this table with all these different numbers when it came to the charges that people would have to pay that are built into the price for high-rise condo units in different cities across the country. And some of them were incredibly high, where some were incredibly low. Let's pull up the graphic. We've got numbers here for about 7 of the different cities, just to give people an idea of what the numbers range from. And on the high end, you can see the rank in the left column there. These are where these different cities ranked. And then you can see in 2020 in Vancouver, right at the top, it used to be a $100,000 charge built into the cost of each condo for municipal charges in Vancouver. Just 2 years later, it rose 25% to $125,000. You see Markham is quite high. Toronto's quite high, coming in at about $99,000, just about 100 grand there. Ottawa's increased by 30% in 2 years. Calgary's gone up. It's low comparatively, but it's gone up 65% in 2 years. And then way at the bottom there, you've got St. John's, Newfoundland, coming in at just $1,463. Gentlemen, I want to get your take on these numbers. Scott, I'll start with you. I recognize that this is a different jurisdiction. Your organization focuses in on Alberta, but do you have any thoughts about why there's such discrepancies between different cities when it comes to these charges?
Yeah, I'll try to quickly maybe explain what development charges are really intended for, because I think a lot of people don't really understand. They just think it's like a tax that's thrown onto housing.
Hmm.
Really, what it's intended to do, and they're called offsite levies in Alberta, but it's the same thing. It's intended to fund
Hmm.
services that are required to support a new housing development. So typically that's roads, water, sewer, wastewater, those kind of core pieces of infrastructure. What we've seen happen over, I would say, the past 20 years, 20 to 30 years, is a whole bunch of other things get added to that bucket, where it's now police stations, fire halls, rec centers, transit facilities. And then in places like BC and Ontario, which is why we get some of those differences, they're charging for things like childcare facilities, recycling facilities. And the scope of which
Mm.
all of these costs are being put on new housing just continues to grow by the rates you're seeing on this chart, by 25%, 30%, 60%. They're doing that because they need to generate revenue to fund infrastructure or supporting services. And development charges are an easier way
Hmm.
to do that than property taxes.
That's interesting. Jay, I want to get your take in a second, but Scott, if just to play devil's advocate here,
Mhm.
for example, I live in an established community. Lots of Canadians watching the show will be in a similar position. If our community needs a new fire hall, then the city goes out, they borrow some money, and they pay for it using property taxes that everyone pays.
Correct.
Whereas you're saying that in a new development, those people that move into those are having to pay is it the full load in a city at the top of that list where they're paying a lot, or what's
I would
going
say
on
the
there?
full load plus. Yeah, my guess is I don't think
Mm,
you can justify at those rates in say Toronto or Vancouver. They're probably paying for that new facility plus a whole bunch of other stuff in those
yeah.
existing communities. So you're actually getting new housing subsidizing some of the mature neighborhoods.
Wow. Jay, we only have a few seconds, but at first blush, what's your take on what's going on?
Well, I agree, and I think a lot of this is actually when you're seeing this huge increase is the municipalities not wanting to deal with how do we find efficiencies in our budget, how do we actually save money, and instead they're just throwing this onto these new developments and building it in a way that, the average taxpayer is not necessarily aware of it. They're able
Mhm.
to get away with it, and they don't actually have to deal with their systemic budget problems.
Yep.
Okay, when we come back, I want to unpack this issue a little bit more, talk about some of the other taxes and fees that people have to pay on new homes in Canada. We'll be back in just a moment.